Dr. Gercke is one of the world's experts in technology impacts on human society. How do you end up in a position like this? What's your background?
Well, here comes the difficulty. I don't have this straight career where I would just do one thing and only one. I've done different things in my life. I founded a couple of companies. I coded myself when I was very young, developed a software in the field of detection of medical diseases. And then I studied medicine and law for a while, did a PhD, started teaching, was advising governments, was advising international organizations. And I'm now an entrepreneur investor and still teach from time to time. This is this mixture that I think makes it interesting for me to combine those different disciplines.
And I guess a general interest in the world and our history and what has formed our society.
Yeah. It is very important to not only focus on one technical aspect, but see the broader picture. And what I'm always interested in, especially due to my work for governments, is there are real world implications of anything you're implementing. When you have a new technology, for the techie inside of me, the person who previously coded, sees the opportunities and the technical possibilities. But if you see, as a politician, they have to implement it. And when I'm drafting legislation and policies for countries, I think about what does it mean to the people. So bringing those different things together is, I think, very important.
If you look back through history, we have had a lot of, we would say, global technology hotspots. China, Egypt, Mesopotamia, Greece, Rome, throughout history. What's the current hotspot in the world right now?
I believe, first of all, it's very important to keep in mind that there were previous developments and there were times when certain regions of the world were playing a leading role. So this is not unique what we have right now. I think globalization in general leveled the playing field that it could be any region. We've seen that India was playing a major role when it comes to services, to digital services. Right now, you can't really say. I think there are indications that China is playing a very strong role when it comes to development and implementation of technology. It's not like in the past where you would say China is just producing things, is the factory of the world. When you're looking at their investments in technology, it's amazing. It's very interesting to see that they're turning from a factory to actually the designers of services. And what is maybe even more interesting is that they're actually implementing this technology in the everyday life of people. So you could say it has a hotspot there. Certainly Silicon Valley is important. The entire field around Stanford is an important area. But Europe also has areas with great potential. Just look at Estonia. I believe you can't really say there are territories. You would more look into entire regions or technologies and where they're applied.
India is, for the time being, the fastest growing country when it comes to population, birth rate in the world. Still, many of us have a feeling that only very few in India. It's like the country is very divided. There are poor regions and there are the industrial hotspots in India. Do you see India taking over the world? Will they succeed in making the entire country a frontrunner in the world, technology-wise?
I'm not sure if I would say this. I would first of all say that you find the same situation, not the same, but similar challenges, differences between those big regions and the more rural areas almost anywhere. You find it in the United States when you're leaving the coast area and turn towards the middle of America. You find it in Europe. You find it even in states like Germany, where you have the eastern part of Germany and the previous western part of Germany being completely different areas when it comes to infrastructure and standards of living and wages. So I don't think it's only an issue of India, but being a developing country, there are certain challenges that I believe cannot be addressed through technology. There is way more to this, and there is way more necessary to harmonize standards of living. One of the challenges that we have all around the world is that the people are moving towards the centers. They're moving towards large urban areas where you usually find jobs, you find the services that you want. What we need to ensure, and this is where technology can play a certain role, is that we're rolling out technology in rural areas. that are currently disconnected, and that can improve the standards of living there. This can build good paying jobs in these regions and can maybe help countries, large countries like India, but also developed Western countries in further developing these rural areas.
I think that's very important what you're saying there. The human part of it, we shouldn't forget about that. And one thing that really defines our identity here in the Western world, at least, is what we're doing in our everyday life. That's most often the first question you make with, so what are you doing for a living? I suppose the future will change. If we look at China, for instance, it's really a strategy founded from the very top of the government that we need to invest in AI because the society will change and machines will take over the jobs from human beings. Is that a trend we see everywhere? Will machines take over the jobs, and should we be afraid of that?
First of all, we've always seen, ever since machines were introduced in work spaces, that machines are taking over jobs. There are some jobs that humans just don't want to do. These are especially in the field of production of cars. When you just look in the old days, there were things that machines can just do better. They can lift a car. It's something we can't easily do. So I believe that this trend will definitely continue. The difference will be that it will not be the classical labor work, the physical work where machines will take over, but it will be more the intellectual work. Any work, whether it's accounting, it's law, anything you can imagine where there is a certain degree of repetition, machines will be able to do better than humans. So we have to prepare for machines entering this field. And that will have a disruptive effect, just as the introduction of machines always had a disruptive effect. Just think about farming, how many people were working in the farming industry, how much more productive it is today with very, very few people working in this field. So the main difference that I see here is we can learn from the past. History does not repeat, but it rhymes. And you can learn from those trends and see there is the possibility to adapt to it. There is the possibility for further development once you have erased jobs in other areas. However, it takes time. And this time, I believe we don't have the time. It's not like 200 years of time to prepare for moving from 50% work in the farming sector to 2% today. We have significantly less time now. And that requires the active involvement of politicians, good policies to cover this process and to make sure that this is not an unstructured development, mainly driven by the industry, but that this is a process where politics and administration is closely involved and ensures that we do not end up in a situation where a lot of people are losing their job and they don't know what to do, and we cannot provide them with any jobs in the future.
So how will an average working day look for my kids in 30 years? Will they work from 9 to 5?
It is very difficult these days to predict what's going to happen in 30 years because the developments that took place in the last 5 years are so dramatic that if we are continuing at this speed or if the speed increases, it is very difficult to even say what's going to happen in 10 years. However, I think that your kids will probably have similarities to your life in their life as well. The only question is, will the dominance of work that we have right now, where you have the same job for 10 or 20 years and you're working from 9 to 5, whether this is part of their life? Or if we see what we already see right now, that more people are moving into different jobs that were unforeseeable in the future. I mean, if you told people 10 years ago, okay, you can upload your own videos on a video platform and you can make a living out of this, they're just, no, you can't. You need a TV station, you need expensive TV equipment to do this. You can't afford it. Now all you need is a good idea, a cell phone, and a platform where you can sell your content. This is available. So maybe we see that it is not the traditional jobs that your kids are going to do. And the difficulty is that our educational systems are still preparing them for the jobs that we used to have 20 years ago, and not necessarily for the jobs that we have right now and that we're going to have in the future.
If we look at how we have been using technology since we started working on two legs, more or less. We've been using technology to develop other technologies and use that technology to improve technology and develop technology. Will we reach the point where the current technology starts to reinvent itself?
Absolutely. I mean, we're already trying right now to use the technology that we have to develop its own things. We've seen this successfully being applied. We've seen this in the aviation industry where machines were designing parts that were not designed by humans, but we're using technology that the technology itself designs something. I think especially machine learning is offering great opportunities. If a designer can go through 20 or 30 different designs every day, and he has 1 year time to do something, he would always stick to what he knows, to the general things everybody does, because he just has limited resources. However, if a machine can go through 1 million different designs in just a day, it can try new things. And we've seen this from the design of antennas for satellites, to the design of components of houses and changing the way we can build the entire architecture. This is going to continue in the future and at even higher speed. And I believe it is good, because for centuries, what we're doing is things we learned, we're trying to pass on to the next generation. We're saying, this is the way you do it, copy me, and you're good. And I believe that these new approaches, like machine learning, enable us to say, you know what, we're going to sit back, let a machine have a look at the process, and maybe come up with a completely different approach that might be better than what we're doing all the time, because we're so stuck in what we're doing.
Shouldn't we be afraid of that? When Google released AlphaGo 0, they had a machine that started with no knowledge at all. And what they did was they let it play against the previous generation, AlphaGo. And over one night, it reached the capability to beat its parents 100 to 0. So it basically, over 24 hours, it learned 3,000 years of history. At some point, this really could accelerate.
I see especially this process of machine learning as absolutely positive. I'm not afraid about the fact that we're undertaking a different approach. I believe that too much in our world is based on past and experiences we made. It is set in stone. Whenever you're trying to break free from this development, whenever you say, I want to do something different than other people, it's very difficult. As long as you're staying on the lane, everything is fine. As soon as you're saying, I want to try something different, it's a problem. It's not as easy. And I believe our society has always made progress when people started to do things differently. And this is how innovation comes. So I'm not afraid about machines trying a different approach. It doesn't mean that we need to do it. It doesn't mean that at the end, if the machine comes up with some crazy ideas where we say, okay, they might have certain advantages, but we still like the old way. We like to build our houses the way we always did and for historic reasons. That's a good argument. But just setting us free from the past and from all the techniques that were passed on from generation to generation is something where I think it offers opportunities to start with an empty page and say, let's rethink it. Let's rethink how we build a building. Does it really need to look like the buildings that we've built throughout the time? Or can it look different? And we've seen over the past that especially those buildings, those architects that built buildings that look different from the usual building, these are the ones that are sticking out right now. These are the ones that we're conserving right now.
But what if the machine decides the same thing? Shouldn't we release ourselves from the history? I mean, if you step on an ant on the street, it probably doesn't change anything in the big picture. What if a self-driving car decides that, well, getting rid of one human being doesn't really change anything in the big picture? That's
correct. First of all, it's not automatic that those principles and value systems that we developed will be applied by a machine. If you would task a machine with driving through a street and it has a passenger in the back, and there is a situation where it needs to decide between either hitting a human that is walking on the street or driving into a wall, and it would maybe kill the passenger in the back. If you don't teach the machine value systems, it would probably just say, okay, one human being less, that's not an issue. We have enough of them. However, we can implement these rules. We can say there are certain rules. It's exactly the same when you're designing a house. You would tell the machine there are certain conditions. There needs to be the possibility to place a bed in a room. So you need to make sure that your concrete floor is suitable of carrying things, a certain weight, each square meter. That's something that is absolutely typical and usual. And I believe that we need to make sure that these rules are well defined. However, with regard to many situations, it is very difficult for us to formulate those rules. So going back to my examples, you have a self-driving vehicle. There is a situation where somebody is just jumping on the road. Even if it uses its super advanced brakes, it would still hit the person, or it can crash into a wall and kill the passenger. How would a human solve this problem? It is basically impossible to solve this problem, and therefore it's difficult to create a rule. We cannot expect a machine to apply a rule that doesn't exist, that we can't formulate. So we should not go to the extreme when we're building those situations, but just try to teach the machine in the everyday life where we want to apply it, what are the rules that are applying, and make sure that it follows, just with regard to the human beings.
Exactly. At the end of the day, I would like to make a decision of weighing one human being's life over 10 others. So should I go in that direction, killing one, or that direction, killing 10? I wouldn't really like to make that decision. But from a pure rational point of view, which we tend to project onto machines, it should go for 1 rather than 10.
Well, I don't agree in this regard. In most legal systems that I've been working in, there is this principle that you wouldn't start counting. You wouldn't say, okay, there is 1 human casualty, there were 10 human casualties, so let's go for the 1 human casualties. We don't do this. If you just say you don't teach the machine anything about ethical principles and legal principles, it might come to the conclusion 1, 10, it's better to go for 1. However, you can add this layer of saying, yes, that might sound logic. However, there are ethical consideration, and 1 is as much as 10. This is possible, and we can even safeguard it. We have the technology today to make sure that these ethical principles that we're implementing are actually really applied. Unlike with regard to human beings, we're putting all kinds of things in our criminal codes and say this is not allowed, this is not allowed, and this is not allowed, but people are still violating it. These are the people, some of them that end up in prison and others not. However, we can use technology that we have today to make sure that machines do follow the rules and that we can afterwards verify whether it followed the rules. This offers great possibilities. I don't want to say it is without danger. I don't want to say there are no challenges. There are hundreds of challenges ahead of us. But it doesn't mean that we cannot address them or that we have to say we ignore this technology. I believe it's an opportunity, and apart from this, it's out there. It will be used anyway. So why don't we go through a guided process where we're saying, let's develop principles, let's apply them, and let's make sure that we safeguard them.
Ethics and regulations is basically what we're talking about here. And I think it's no big secret that these are different in Europe and China. Does China have an advantage over Europe when it comes to technology and applying technology and new technology into society?
I first of all think my experience, having worked with around 100 countries worldwide, helping a lot of them to develop legislation, regulations, policies, there are not that many differences. For example, if you're looking at the criminal law system in China, the code itself, it's very much based on the German penal code. There are great similarities. That's the first thing. However, there are differences. There are differences in the way the political system works, for example. And things can more easily be implemented in China. It's if you don't listen to your people, if you don't have processes where people can stop certain developments by saying, no, we reject to the idea that there is a rail track here, or that you're building something right in the middle of a protected area. If you don't have this, of course, the speed might be faster. The question is if the society will accept this and if the society is happy with this and how the society will respond to it. I very much believe in the democratic processes. I very much believe in the idea that we're having different interests that have to come together. It's not only one decision maker who says, I want to do it, but I want to go through a process. And therefore, I'm always worried when I see processes that are streamlined with regard to efficiency, and you don't have different interests that also exist in China, like they exist everywhere, that you don't have them reflected. I don't want to bash China. There are very positive developments there. There are things that we can see with regard to the use of technology, where they increased safety, where they increased the protection of resources. But I believe that there are fundamentally different political systems. And I am personally a strong believer in democracy and strengthening democracy. And I also see in the Western world that some countries are trying to streamline the processes. When the President of the United States believes he has the power to decide whether to start a war or not, or to impose tariffs and not include the Congress, that's also something where we don't need to point to China, where we can also say, well, is this the right process? On the other hand side, if you're looking in Europe, endless debates and where an agreement cannot be reached, that can also not be the solution. We need to work on those fundamental principles, but also accept that some countries are different and that some systems are different, and none is superior to the other.
Are we becoming better at this looking back over the past 10, 20 years?
I believe that we are living in a time that has never been as good before. This is the best time to be alive, and I believe that when your kids are 30, I still hope that this is also the best time in human history. Therefore, I believe, yes, we're getting better, and these difficulties in the processes, the need to debate and having different opinions also in there, opinions that you don't like, political processes that you don't agree to, political parties where you don't agree to. Having this debate is, I think, something very positive. And to see that in the last European elections, there were more people participating is something very positive. That's something where I think you can see that this is not a trend where the interest of the people is declining, but where there is great interest, and we can encourage people to be even more interested. And maybe the future will allow your kids in 30 years to spend less time working in jobs, but more time participating in a democracy and sharpening the future.
Or maybe my kids in 30 years, maybe they are in a world where machines are basically taking over most of the labor that is being performed by human beings today. Could we imagine a future where human beings are more entertainment for the machines?
Well, if you want to be sarcastic, you could say that is already the case, because if you're just looking at some of the situations, you could interpret them in a way that the machines are already playing with human beings. So when you're going to YouTube and watch a video, you get recommendations, and around 70% of the videos that I watch on YouTube are based on recommendations. So a machine, an algorithm was pointing you towards a video. And when we start analyzing which videos are they pointing to, sometimes it's really odd. They're pointing you towards conspiracy theories. You could say, okay, there is an algorithm playing with you, seeing if you're going to move into this direction, if you can present you completely stupid videos and you're going to watch them. However, I don't see it this way. If you're looking down on the road right now, there are cars driving humans. They're not walking anymore, they're driving. When you're looking into how people navigate through a building, they're going to a lift or an escalator. Machines are already a major part of our society. I, however, don't think that this necessarily means that we don't have a space. I think it will just change the perspective. It will open new doors because we don't have to do the work that we're currently doing. It would allow us to enter new spaces and say, I'm going to do work where previously we never had resources to do, or where very few people are currently investing resources. And we're going to see, I cannot anticipate the future. I don't know how it's going to look like. I'm worried about some of the trends. I'm worried about too much decisions being taken machines and us being unable to verify what the machines are doing. However, in general, I have a positive view into the future. And I believe that there will be more of a positive interaction and more active interaction. Right now, my car does not necessarily interact with me. I'm just driving it stupidly somewhere. Wouldn't it be nice if there would be more of an interaction, of a dialogue between me and the technology that I'm using?
In a maybe near, maybe distant future, we will start colonizing Mars. Will that be a copy of planet Earth, or will it be a completely different civilization that we're building up there?
I believe that in general, things like traveling back to the moon, or traveling to Mars, or even other planets in the future is something important because it's inspiring us. It's just taking us a step further. I don't believe that building colonies on Mars is the future of mankind. I think it would be way more important to protect this planet and to make sure that we can survive on this planet than putting our hopes that we will build up something new on a different planet. There are significantly more resources required to build up something outside of this planet then we would need to protect this planet and to do better here. So I think that a lot of people are putting hope on colonies on Mars or traveling to other solar systems that have given up on this planet or that are not as optimistic with regard to the future of this planet. I believe that the future of mankind is here, and I'm very much I'm very thankful for the current political movements all around the world with regard to putting more emphasis on protecting the environment. We see this both in the United States with ambitious political plans of the opposition party. We see it in Europe, more cautiousness of the importance of the environment, more conscious of the importance of the environment by many people, especially the younger generation. So I think this is where our focus should be. I'm open to all technical innovations. Let's send people to Mars if this drives innovation and encourages people to look forward, but the focus should be here.
So one final question. If you became the president of the Earth with unlimited power, how should we spend our resources and technology?
I'm a strong believer that my personal views are not that important. I'm advising governments all the time, and I'm not trying to advise governments in a way that I want them to do what I believe is right, but is right for the people. And usually a politician of a small Pacific islands knows much better what his people need than I do. So I don't come to places and tell them that my view of the world should be what they're doing. I don't know, despite all my travel, I don't know the world well enough to be able to say where we should put our resources. If you see it from a perspective of a Western country, you might want to invest in cleaner air, having less traffic on the street. If you're living in a rural area in a developing country where you don't have access to water, they might say, hey, I need some water first. And if you're living in an area, if you're living in one of those major metropoles in this world, and you're struggling to earn enough money for your family and send them to a college and enable them a better future, the most important thing for you might be, I need income, I need proper wages. I believe we have in different parts of the world, even within countries, we have different priorities, and we should address all of them. There shouldn't be there isn't the one thing that we need to solve, but there are a lot of micro things that we need to solve. And I believe in regional power, that the people that are close to the ground, that have their boots on the ground, in dialogue with the constituencies, with the people that are living there, should determine what is really important.
Thanks for taking your time.
You're most welcome.